when they asked me to play the part and to be a part of it, there were many very, very attractive aspects to it. First of all, it was a wonderful script, and it was a very bold and radical approach. Perry Mason means a lot to people in America. I don't know how much the series means to people across the Pacific, but we all remember it from our childhood. Raymond Burr, very kind of serious, stolid lawyer, and the famous Perry Mason moment in every episode. In many ways, it was a kind of template for a lot of lawyer shows that followed. But this completely stood all those expectations on their head. In this, first of all, Perry Mason wasn't even a lawyer. He was a down on his luck private investigator working for a lawyer, my part. And the lawyer he worked with was kind of over the hill. He used to might have been a good lawyer in his prime, but he was not a good lawyer anymore. And he's nothing without his private investigator. So it becomes an origin story. It becomes how does Perry Mason basically overtake his mentor, and it's a mentor in decline. To me, that's a fascinating dynamic. It's a whole father-son story with a real difference, and it was written with such wit and snap, like an old-time 1930s film, and yet it has a wonderful modern sensibility. A lot of the issues that sort of crop up in the course of the series have a lot to do with what's going on right now: police corruption, police brutality, racism, the role of women. Della Street is a very important character, all those things. And on top of all that, the director was a man named Tim Van Patten. I don't know whether you're very aware of him, but he is absolutely one of our best television directors. He he was a major director on The Wire, The Sopranos, Boardwalk Empire, Sex and the City, some of our major groundbreaking series. And I knew that with him in charge, it was going to be something very new and very innovative. And it was a very happy experience. And one other element, Matthew Rhys, a completely wonderful actor to work with. I just love the way there are two wonderful writers who did this adaptation of the old series. Their names are Ron Fitzgerald and Rollin Jones. They are very much a part of what's so special about the series. They set out to just make it as different as they could from the original uh, in the 1950s. You have to remember, even the 1950s TV series was based on pulp fiction from the 1930s. The writer of Perry Mason's stories was a man named Earl Stanley Gardner, who set his stories all in 1930s Los Angeles. So these two writers, they took it back to that era. And they also combed through the history of Los Angeles during that period for amazing events and extraordinary characters. They wove all those nonfiction characters into the fiction they created for Perry Mason. And they said it all, they gave it this wonderful period feel. The language is very much the language of crime noir films from the 1930s, and yet the sensibility is very, very contemporary. The best thing I can compare it to is Chinatown, which is one of my very favorite films. Uh, so I would say that that's what made it special for me, and that's why I was drawn to it. Well, it reminds me of a great experience I had in theater in the 1980s. I don't know whether you know the great American comedy, The Front Page. It's a play by Charles Hecht, or Ben Hecht and Charles MacArthur, about journalists in Chicago. Tough, very gritty play with a huge ensemble. It's a play written for about 25 actors. And it can only work if everybody in it is a terrific character actor. And I was in a great production of The Front Page, playing this famous role, Walter Burns, this very tough newspaper editor. It's a part played by Cary Grant in the movies, in the film His Girl Friday, uh, where they just changed the gender of the other major character, Hildy Johnson. Uh, to me, it reminded me of that experience, just a great piece of ensemble acting. And I could spend the next 5 minutes listing all the great actors in the cast of Our Perry Mason. It's not just Matthew Rhys and Juliet Rylance, but Robert Patrick, Eric Lang, Andrew Howard, Gail Rankin, Veronica Falcone, Tatiana Maslany, all of them, Jefferson Mays, Shea Wiggum. These are such expert actors, and they were all so wonderful at playing that period and that style. That's what made it so special. I really consider it one of the most fun jobs I ever had. Well, for one thing, I'm getting older. Most of my parts are old men now. So I'm playing all sorts of variations on age and the fear of age, the fear of growing old and losing your viability, uh, your frailty, your insecurity, and your defiance, all those different colors. It's to me, my career is more interesting now than it's ever been because these roles are so unique. And I don't have nearly as much competition as I used to have. I'm the one who survived. So I'm on a very short list of people to play these roles. Just think of all the different things that you can play in the role like E.B. In Perry Mason. E.B. Jonathan is a man who used to be on top of the world. He used to have all these connections. He used to win cases. He used to get people off, uh, and he hasn't for years. He desperately needs this case, and when it turns into a big case, it, he feels like he's landed a big one, you know. And then when it starts going wrong, and when he realizes he can't even get the simplest thing for his clients, his despair and his panic is another fascinating thing to play. It's very rich. A couple of years ago, I played King Lear on stage. It was the New York Shakespeare Festival. And it was the same thing. It's the very high emotions of the fear and panic of growing old. Unfortunately, I'm beginning to have access to that fear myself. So why not put it to good use?